Right. Okay. We are now at Roman numeral 3, letter C. We're going to go through the actual holidays now, the actual important days on the calendar, and just talk about their meaning and talk about how they're practiced. Great books on this. One is Rabbi Greenberg's The Jewish Way. It uses the holidays as a platform to kind of offer a philosophy of Judaism. Another good book that does this is by Rabbi Jonathan Sachs called Seasons and Celebrations. It's sort of essays on each of the holidays where he explains the ideas that they're trying to contribute. There's another book by Rabbi Laufer called, I forget, it's on the book list. Also, a theology of the holidays and what the Jewish calendar is going to impart. So we're going to skip, let's skip to Hanukkah because Hanukkah is coming really soon, and just to make sure we so we're all on the same page for Hanukkah since it's coming, and then we'll go back to the beginning. Hanukkah is not a holiday that's in the Torah. Okay, it's a holiday that was created post-Torah. It's not even mentioned at all in the Hebrew Bible, in our scriptures. It's the Book of Maccabees. The books of Maccabees are included in some Christian Bibles. That's the apocryphal books. They're in the Catholic Bible, but they were not canonized by Jews. They don't exist in Hebrew, although at least one of them we think was written in Hebrew originally. The first book of Maccabees, it seems to be echoing and copying the style of the Book of Kings. So it starts sentences with the word "and." Did I talk about this in this? The Book of Maccabees starts a lot of sentences with the word "and," which is very bad Greek but very common biblical Hebrew, right? And it was in the days of so and so, and it happened that, and after these things, right? But a lot in historical narratives in Hebrew Bible, but not in Greek. So that's a clue that the Book of Maccabees was written originally Greek. So it represents an addition to the calendar that we made ourselves after the time of the Torah, really after the biblical period was over as well, that we sort of added this day to our calendar. There are actually many, many holidays that we added to our calendar during the period that sort of commemorate events surrounding the episode of the Hanukkah story. So let's just sort of review the Hanukkah story. Let's go about our major timeline. It was the events of the Torah, the exodus from Egypt, the conquest of Canaan by Joshua, the period of the Judges. This is all, the stories, the historical narrative of Tanakh, of the Hebrew Bible, the period of the kings, David and Solomon, the divided kingdoms. This comes to an end in the year 586 BCE, when the Babylonians destroyed the temple and exile the Jews in Jerusalem to Babylonia. 70 years later, they come back under the auspices of the Persians. We talked about this last week in the context of Ezra. Okay, so Ezra was sort of involved in that renewal, that return to Zion. We actually don't know that much about the Persian period. They were there for a couple hundred years. We know very little about it. Alexander the Great comes and conquers land of Israel in whatever it was that he was alive. I used to know this. I don't know, 300, is that right? Is that 300? No. 2-something BCE? Whenever Alexander comes through, how did Alexander the Great live? Is that the most important thing to... Are you looking it up?
Yep.
Thanks, okay, great. After Alexander dies, he has this incredible empire, and he dies a very young man. His empire stretches from Egypt in the west, all the way into India, north is Macedonia, and...
He died in 323.
That's in 323 BC. Okay. Thank you. So sometime before he died, he conquers Israel, and the land of Israel, Jerusalem, is part of his empire. He was very nice to the Jews, which is why, according to legend, Alexander became a Jewish name. You might see Jewish kids named Alexander. It's a Hebrew name, Alexander, or Sender in Yiddish comes from Alexander, and because Alexander the Great was good to the Jews in the course of his conquest. When he died, his kingdom was split 3 ways. The Ptolemies ruled in Egypt, and the Seleucids ruled in Syria, and the Macedonians ruled in Macedonia and Greece. Jerusalem, land of Israel, was right in between the Ptolemies in Egypt and the Seleucids in Syria, and so they were constantly fighting over who would control Eretz Yisrael. That was like, it was a very strategic location. And in the context of this empires swapping back and forth of who would dominate, there began a period of religious persecution, which is very unusual for the Greeks. The Greeks were not into religious persecution because generally people who believe in multiple gods don't feel the need to impose their religion on others. They just add your god to their list of gods, and they're just very happy to go along with things. But for some reason that we don't quite understand, you had a Syrian king, emperor, sort of aligned with a faction of Jews who thought like the pro-Seleucid faction of the Jewish community in imposing a anti-Jewish program in the land of Israel upon the Jewish community. That gave rise to a rebellion. That rebellion was successful after a number of years, and celebrating that successful rebellion is sort of the origin story of Hanukkah. And there were many, many holidays. The group that successfully fought off this Syrian-Greek army, they're called the Hasmonean kings, Hashmonaim in Hebrew, and like many countries, they had many holidays that they added to the calendar to celebrate their victory. Nicanor Day was a particularly important one. That was the day of their greatest military triumph. And Nicanor Day was an important holiday in the Jewish calendar. 13th of Adar was a holiday celebrated every year, Nicanor Day. And there actually is a book called Megillat Ta'anit. It's a list of days when it's forbidden to fast because of all these special things, these celebrations that the Hasmoneans added to their kingdom. Fast forward, after a few generations, the rulers became, really after one generation, they became fairly corrupt, and they squabbled with each other, and descended into civil war, and they basically invited the Romans to come in and resolve the civil war. The Romans came in and never left, and ultimately that led, in the year 70 of the Common Era, some generations later, to the destruction of the Second Temple and this rebellion against the Romans. But so the whole thing kind of ended, ended sort of poorly. And when that happened, all of their holidays were abolished. We don't celebrate any of that because why do we celebrate the Independence Day of a country that was destroyed? Why do we celebrate the victories of this group that led us to independence for 50 years before they fought each other and terrible civil war and the Romans came and ended the whole thing? What's there to celebrate? So all their holidays were abolished. The 13th of Adar, which was their big holiday, is today a fast day. It's like Tanya Esther. The day before Purim is a fast day. It's used to be Nicanor Day, a great national Independence Day holiday. The only exception is Hanukkah, which was a holiday from this period, which has endured in the Jewish calendar, and we still celebrate today because of something else that happened that Hanukkah is also celebrating. It's not just or not primarily a holiday of this military victory, even though that's what the early sources speak about. The early sources about Hanukkah, the first book of Maccabees, second book of Maccabees, which tell the story from very different perspectives. Both of them, though, focused on this miraculous victory over the Greeks. The prayers that we recite on Hanukkah, the Al Hanisim prayer that we add to our Amidah, we add to Birkat Hamazon, talks about our victory over the Greeks and the Jews who are allied with them. When the Talmud discusses Hanukkah, though, the Babylonian Talmud, so this was hundreds of years later, as the Talmud discusses Hanukkah, it tells us a story, the origin story of Hanukkah, which is that in the context of this victory, when we returned to the Beit HaMikdash, we were not able to light the 7-branched menorah, the big lamp that existed in the Beit HaMikdash, in the temple, because the oil had been contaminated, made impure by the Greeks and the Jews who were associated with them, and they couldn't get new oil. It would take 8 days for new oil to come, and the tiny little bit of oil they found managed to last for 8 days. And so that became the symbol of their, the foundation of this holiday. That miracle of oil lasting became an element of Hanukkah that could survive even when all the national aspects of the holiday didn't seem like something worth celebrating anymore. I'll say something else about that. The 25th of Kislev, that first day of Hanukkah, is another day of significance in the Jewish calendar. Already, the Mishnah describes that day as a day when the last day you could bring your olive crop to the temple as first fruits. Okay, you bring your first fruits were brought as a gift to the temple. You have to do it in season. The end of the olive season, the final day, is the 25th of Kislev. So it already is a day, sort of from the ancient sources of the Oral Torah and from the agricultural land of Israel. It was a day that marked the end of the olive harvest, a time when people would be bringing olives to the temple. We also find in the biblical book of Zechariah an image of a menorah in the Beit HaMikdash, in the temple, overflowing with oil. And that's from the very earliest stages of the Second Temple. That's the Haftarah that we read in Shul on Hanukkah. So already, centuries before, as the Jews went back from Babylonia to Jerusalem and rebuilt the temple, you have the prophet Zechariah, one of the last of the prophets, sharing this image of a menorah overflowing with oil. And then we have a holiday about oil lasting 8 days on the day of the olive harvest. So there seems to be something, it's not just this story, this legend of the oil lasting 8 days. It's actually, it's much more than that, because this image of overflowing oil on the menorah in the Second Temple, that's an image that comes from Zechariah's prophecy. Zechariah's prophecy was about this Second Temple is also a place that God endorses. Even though it's not as grand as the First Temple, even though the miracles are not as abundant, this project that you're involved in, returning to Zion, rebuilding Jerusalem, rebuilding the temple, this is a project that God endorses. That was the meaning of that vision that Zechariah, the prophet Zechariah, shared at the very beginning of the Second Temple period. And so, 300 years later, when the temple is rededicated, there's something very fitting about this miraculous way in which the lamp burned for 8 days. That's an instantiation of the prophecy of Zechariah. And it happened on the day of the olive harvest. So how do we celebrate? So that's Hanukkah. Okay? And that's the 3-minute, 10-minute version of Hanukkah. How is it observed today? How do we celebrate Hanukkah? We celebrate Hanukkah in a few ways. One, in synagogue, our tefillot, our prayers are adjusted. We add to our prayers for Hanukkah. We recite Hallel. Hallel is a series of joyous psalms that are recited or sung on joyous and special days in the calendar. And so Hallel is recited as part of Shachrit all 8 days of Hanukkah.
Also on Purim or not?
Hallel is not recited on Purim. That is a very interesting question. Why?
Okay.
You can ask me when we talk about Purim. Say, why do we say Hallel on Purim? Okay?
Okay, sounds good.
All right. We do say it all 8 days of Hanukkah. We say Hallel, and you can do it if you're praying by yourself. You can say Hallel. If you're praying in the synagogue, we'll say Hallel. It's printed in all the prayer books. It's called Hallel. It's a series of psalms with a blessing before and a blessing after that we recite on special days. So it's a way. It turns the day into one of praise and thanksgiving by reciting these special psalms. That's one. Two, we add a paragraph to our daily prayers, the Amidah, the 19 blessings that we recite in silence while standing at attention. There's an added paragraph that we add for Hanukkah. So it's a regular weekday Amidah, it's a regular weekday, it's not Shabbat, it's not a biblical festival. We say the regular weekday Amidah, but we put in that extra paragraph for Hanukkah. The same is true with Birkat HaMazon, the grace after meals, we add the paragraph for Hanukkah. So our whole day should feel differently because we're adding these prayers that speak about the nature of the day and express our gratitude for this miracle that we're celebrating. And finally, there's a mitzvah of lighting candles. This is done in our homes. It's done at night, at the beginning part of the night. The universal practice is to light 1 candle in the first night, 2 candles in the second night, 3 candles in the third night, up until 8 candles on the 8th night. And there's always an extra candle that's lit alongside these day number candles. That's called a shamash. It's like a service candle. We use that to light the other candles because the candles, they're like mitzvah lights. They're sacred lights. You're not allowed to use them for mundane purposes, even for lighting other candles and stuff. So we use the shamash for that purpose, the helper candle for that purpose. And also the helper candle allows us to make use of we're not supposed to benefit from the light. So you have all these lights in your home, you're going to automatically get benefit from it. So you have a secular light, the shamash, that's there with them, so you can say, well, I'm getting benefit from that, I'm not getting benefit from these Hanukkah candles, which are sacred. Just look at them only and not use them. Yeah?
Why again do you light the new day? The new day first.
Yeah, so you light as you add candles, you light the newest candle first. So on the third day you light candle 3, then candle 2, then candle 1, right? Each day as you add candles, you light the one that's add is lit first. I forget why. I once did, there is
There's like
a.
multiple reasons probably.
I've only seen one. I don't remember what it is. I don't remember.
That's part of the mitzvah, right? Is that's kind of like
Yeah,
carry that-
it's an enhancement of the mitzvah. The Talmud says the basic mitzvah is called, the Talmud says ner ish ubeito, which means one light per household. So the first night, one light. Second night, one light. Third night, one light. And if you have a family of one or a family of six, one light.
Interesting.
All 8 days of Hanukkah, that's the basic mitzvah. Then the Talmud says if you want to do it in an extra special way, you write one light per member of the household. So if it's a 6-person household, 6 lights on the first day, 6 lights on the second day, 6 lights on the third day, 6 lights on the fourth day. That's the third level. The second level. The extra special level is what everyone does. There are 2 opinions. Beit Shammai, the school of Shammai in ancient times, said you start with 8 days and then you go down to 1. And Beit Hillel, the school of Hillel, when we follow, say you start with 1 and you go to 8. So that's not essential to the mitzvah. That's the way that the Talmud tells us is the extra special ways to do the mitzvah, and everyone has adopted that practice. So it could be 1 set of lights per household, per family. Some have a custom where each member of the family lights his or her own. That's what we do in our family. They're both fine.
Yeah. Is there any differences with Ashkenazi or anything? Or is it now today you're probably at 95?
Everyone does the 1 through 8 in terms of is it one candle, 1 menorah per family or per individual. Those are very different customs. And I don't just do what your family does or do what you like. I don't think it matters too much. Like you fulfill the mitzvah anyway, in either case. There's a blessing that we say, 2 blessings we say before lighting candles, like most mitzvot. There's a mitzvah blessing that we say before. There's a second mitzvah blessing we say, a blessing that we say for the miracle, that God did 4 miracles for our ancestors at this season, at this time of the year, and that blessing as well. And then we light the candles. On the first night we say also a shechianu. Shechianu is a blessing we say for any annual mitzvah. The first time we do it. So the first night of Hanukkah we say the shechianu blessing, but then the subsequent nights you only say the 2 blessings, the mitzvah blessing and the miracle blessing. The blessings are recited and then we begin to light. Okay, we do mitzvah right, proximate to the blessing. Any questions on Hanukkah? Anything else? That's what I leave out. Yeah?
Left to right or right to left?
Okay. So as you, from whose perspective? Let's all,
It's in front of me and I'm lighting
okay,
it.
but let's all, the custom is to light them in the window actually, if you can. So let's all pretend we are lighting in that window, okay? So, here. Let's turn the camera to the, okay. So you set them up and you add from right to left. So the first night, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. From right to left, and as you light the newest one first, and you light from left to right. Okay.
What about the gifts?
So Hanukkah gifts are not a traditional part of the holiday. The custom in Europe was to give gifts of money to children. They could buy themselves some treats. There's also Shulchan Aruch talks about a special obligation to give tzedakah on Hanukkah. I think that's actually part of our
Tenant?
excuse me?
Like a tenant?
No, it's part of our demonstration of our opposition to this Greek ethos which was we characterized as a kind of social Darwinist, the strong prosper and the weak are meant to be trampled upon, and that was this ideology that we're rebelling against at Hanukkah time, and that's the kind of logic that we reject, and the way that we demonstrate that is by giving to the poor. And so gifts of tzedakah is certainly part of Hanukkah. I think part of that sort of evolved into giving money to children, Hanukkah geld, so they could enjoy the holiday in that way, and maybe also give to tzedakah themselves, and then give presents on Hanukkah time. I think that's an American custom the last 50 or 60 years. That's like a Christmas thing.
Yeah.
I think it's nice to the truth is, you're actually supposed to give presents to children at all holidays. That's the Rambam nights. You should give presents to the members of your household before Pesach and Sukkot and Shavuot, so that they like enjoy the holiday and are joyful. That's a really nice idea. So certainly nothing wrong with giving presents at Hanukkah time. I think it might be appropriate to only give to children, because the point is like we're helping kids like have happy memories around celebrating the holiday, as opposed to giving a present to everyone on your list, which is sort of like an American Christmas practice, which I don't know if that like needs to be a Jewish thing. Again, like giving presents is a nice thing to do. I don't want to come out against it, but I just think it's worth like protecting like our holiday, which has its own meaning and its own like it's about its own set of ideas, and rather than turn it into like Jewish Christmas,
Like
which
Hanukkah, Harry?
yeah, just making it like sort of like become like this really big deal. It's a rabbinic holiday. It's not a biblical holiday. There's no prohibition against work. It's just not the equivalent of Christmas. Is like the most sacred day in the Christian calendar. It's a day of prayer. It's a day with like the greatest music ever written in the Western tradition has been Christmas. It's like it's just like inspires the most like incredible creative artwork and music and et cetera, and profound religious thoughts and devotions. Hanukkah just isn't that holiday for us. But because it occurs a week or two before around Christmas time, so like people in America have like made it into like it's the most publicly celebrated Jewish holiday, which is so there's a story of the Jewish Rip Van Winkle who falls asleep in 1920, a time of rising anti-Semitism in the United States, when the Jewish community really had very little political power and very little influence, and really felt itself under threat. Right after the restrictions on immigration, it was a time of rising nativism in the United States. So he falls asleep for 100 years. Almost 100 years? 98 years. Wakes up and sees, Hanukkah parties in the White House and menorahs on town squares and shop windows saying Happy Hanukkah. And he thinks, wow, if this is what they do for Hanukkah, I can't wait to see what they do for Shavuot. Okay? Really important Jewish holiday, right? So, okay. So there's a long, okay. Yeah?
Actually, two questions.
Right.
One, on Shabbat, how do you
Good question.
light that?
Good question. Right. So on Shabbat coincides with Hanukkah. That's really important. We light Hanukkah candles first,
Okay.
because once we light Shabbat candles and accept Shabbat, we can't light other candles. So you light Hanukkah candles first, and you should make sure to get longer burning Hanukkah candles for Friday, because they have to burn. You have to light them before Shabbat starts, so at least like 18 minutes before sunset, and they have to last through sunset, through the period after sunset until it actually gets dark. So the longer artisanal Hanukkah candles will...
Because other nights you do it when it gets dark, right?
If you wait till it's dark, they have to last 30 minutes, but if you light before sunset, they should last much longer.
Okay.
So 90 minutes. So the longer candles should be fine, or an oil lamp, that should be fine.
Okay.
You could use tea lights. Again, the essential mitzvah is just one light. So if it's Friday and you're going out for dinner, and you're not going to be home, and you don't want to leave 7 candles burning for an hour and a half in an empty house where the cat could knock into them and burn down, well, God forbid, right? Terrible thing. So you light one tea light and stick it in your sink.
Okay.
You know what I mean? Right? Because
That's
if at least one light, or 7 tea lights, whatever. Put them someplace safe. They'll burn. You light in your home, and then it's in your sink. It'll be fine. By the time you get home, they'll be out and there's nothing left. So just be safe. You have to be safe about that. That's an important point. Right? You're supposed to be home to light the candles and enjoy the light while being at home. So if you're going out for dinner, that's a little challenging. Maybe wait till you come back to light, or depending on if it's a Friday, then maybe light in your sink or something. Right?
Is the dreidel just another kind of game that kind of...
Yeah, I don't know the history.
Oh, I actually just read something interesting.
What'd you read?
So I read that it was during a time when kids you couldn't openly study.
Yeah.
And so the kids would have the dreidel so that when they were studying, and was it Romans at the time?
The Greeks, the Greeks, yeah, that's
at the
it,
time
yeah.
came
Yeah.
by, they would...
Yeah, so I heard that story too, that it was like a way to pretend that
they made it look
they were
like
caught, if they were learning Torah, and when they weren't supposed to, they could pretend that we're just playing this game, and that became part of the holiday. I suspect that is not the true history of the dreidel. I haven't heard anything else but I don't think that story goes back. I don't think we have any ancient stories that say that. And so the question is, when we first find people writing about dreidels, let's say it's like 1,000 years or 1,500 years after these events would have taken place, you're a little suspicious that people are playing this top and they don't know, you know what I mean? So generally, because of persecution, that's why we do this strange thing. You find that all over the place in Jewish writings. It's sort of like your standard answer if you don't know why we do something, just say, oh, because of persecution. Why do we read the Haftarah? Why do we say Shema in the middle of the Musaf Kedusha? Why do we blow shofar twice or all these like things that still in our liturgy in the way that don't make a lot of sense? And the answer is always, oh, because of persecution. They added it because of this, you know. Or they weren't allowed to do this, so we did that instead. Or they were worried about this, so we did this to confuse them, and they wouldn't know. So it's sort of like a stock answer that you give to things, and you know.
Okay.
So
One more question
Mhm.
about Hanukkah.
sure,
Kind of going to this gift thing.
yeah.
What do you recommend for people that are converting, how they handle the holidays with their families in terms of like their families still do
Yeah,
gifts?
yeah.
So like,
yeah,
is it
yeah.
appropriate to give
A
gifts?
lot of people have. I mean, not just people converting. A lot of people have non-Jewish family.
Right, I guess, sorry,
right?
the question is
Yeah.
like.
How do you? Yeah. How do you deal with
that?
the holidays of
I've
non-Jewish
never
family?
had to do it.
So, short answer is, we should talk in private and we'll come up with a strategy. It's hard to give like general rules. I think it's really important to maintain ties with your family of origin, your cousins, whatever it is. It's just good to be close to your family. I think it's also important, like, not to celebrate. Like, Christmas is an important religious day in the Christian calendar. It's important not to celebrate Christmas if you are Jewish or becoming Jewish. So in between that, it's going to look a little bit different for each family.
Okay.
I think, you know, it might be you visit your family, you know, sometime in the winter, so you get to make sure you see them every year, and you can exchange gifts of like a, you know, just a big celebrate, you know, whatever, or, you know, you can give your gifts to them at Hanukkah time, you know, right? Because that's
Yeah.
a holiday you
Like
celebrate.
that's the question, is like,
I
is
think
that
that's
appropriate to say?
you could do that. It could be also if like all the cousins and the brother and everyone comes is going to be home on Christmas, so maybe something that's, I don't know, maybe you come up and maybe you do like, maybe you join them for dessert or something and you have some coffee with it. Just there's nothing wrong with being in the house with people celebrating Christmas if that's when the brother and the cousin and everyone is going to be under one roof, so you don't want to miss out on the chance to see everyone. But I don't know, like, but I would imagine it would be not so comfortable to be like sitting down at the table when everyone is like actually celebrating eating their Christmas holiday meal. So looking for ways to find those opportunities. Yeah, it's like maintain the connection with the family and like show them that you care about them, show them that you love them, without like celebrating their holidays, right? And I think over
also
time,
like they have just as many questions like how do we
Yeah.
honor what you're doing
That's
and
great,
like
that's great,
you know
yeah,
like
yeah.
respect that. So I think those are I just think there's
yeah, no, I think like that's, you know, I think just say like, I'm seeking ways to maintain my ties. I really want to like all of us be together. I don't celebrate this holiday anymore, so that maybe like, I don't know, maybe like I'm not going to join you like Christmas night or for Christmas dinner, but maybe we'll come by for breakfast or something, or like maybe we can all like when everyone's home we'll all like get to hang out then, or you know, we had it was a relative in my family who in like extended family. There were kids that are Jewish grandparents, but the kids are not being raised as Jews, and the grandparent would send them Hanukkah presents and ask that they be given on Hanukkah. Like these are for me. This is the holiday I celebrate. These are my grandchildren. I want to give, you know, and like that's, I don't know. Like, I think that's like you can ask. Like I think that seems a reasonable thing to say. Like, you know, I don't know, like ways to like, you know, like show love. While that's like the big answer. I'll say show love. Don't celebrate their holidays. That's like the big answer. And like what that looks like in your family this year is a little bit harder to kind of give generalities. Kate, you were to say something, or
No, I had a different question.
Sure.
So I've been reading or hearing some stuff like that, like alternate Hanukkahs, that they were like violent zealots who were primarily fighting other Jews, and that it's like not so much an uprising for freedom, which I like, which I think, but like there's kind of like harsher takes on the message.
So this is a David Brooks column a few years ago, maybe.
Oh boy.
You're welcome to read. There was once, there was a family friend who said to me, Hanukkah is the celebration of the victory of people like you over people like me. Which was a very loaded statement. Yeah, you know, and Shia Cohen is a historian at Harvard who studies this time period. He has a book called From the Maccabees to the Mishnah, so okay, this is well within that framework. He once gave a lecture, like that I heard. Like, who were the Maccabees? Were they, you know, kind of like the Jewish Taliban? These like tribal guys from the mountains who come in and overthrow more enlightened cosmopolitan, you know, culture, fighting. So yes, it was a civil war in large part. Jews were fighting other Jews. There was a faction of Jews who were in power, who aligned themselves with the Greeks in this Hellenizing movement of bringing Greek religion, Greek culture to dominate. That happened earlier in Jewish history. King Manasseh made the Assyrian religion and culture the religion and culture of Jerusalem and his kingdom. So that had happened before. The Hellenizers were not the first to think that the way to have peace and progress in the kingdom was to align your culture with this dominant empire that is around. But the persecution is that Jews were facing actual religious persecution, which was again unusual for the Greco-Roman world, and so it's sort of notable that that's actually what sparked this rebellion was real, bona fide religious persecution. In defense of the Maccabees, from that charge of being religious zealots, religious fundamentalists, one, they are the ones who discovered that we are allowed to violate Shabbat to save life. There was a group associated with the Maccabees called the Hasidim, the pious ones, who wouldn't fight on Shabbat, even in self-defense, and they all got killed, and that was the end of them. And it was around that time, many scholars think, that we realized the Torah says, and you should live through the mitzvah, not die for the mitzvah, and it's better to desecrate one Shabbat so that you can stay alive and observe many other Shabbatot in the future. And so the Maccabees wouldn't attack on Shabbat, but they would defend themselves on Shabbat. So that shows a kind of flexible religious openness to discovering new insights in the Torah, and that those discoveries should be on behalf of a kind of moderation and making the Torah's burden a livable one and pragmatic. Also, once they took power, they sent ambassadors to Rome. That was the very first things they did. The origins of the Roman Jewish community is the ambassadors that the Maccabees sent to Rome, and they, gave a whole presentation to the Senate. So they were not, again, they were not like these. It's not like North Korea, they were interested in having being part of the world, okay? And they saw the value of having alliances with other powerful rising powers. And also the Book of Maccabees describes some sort of plebiscite they had, where their rule was confirmed by a vote of the population, where in the absence of a true king, it was a descendant of David, we're going to rule by proxy until then, and this was confirmed by popular claim of the people gathered and assembled. So that's a kind of democratic, Greek, if you will, basis for their political legitimacy, right? They were trying to exercise government with the consent of the governed. So that's also a way that they were sort of, again, modern, aware of you don't find that in, I don't know, when Samuel anoints Saul as king and then he anoints David as king, there's no sense that anyone else has any voice in the matter other than God telling Samuel who the king is going to be. When the Maccabees are, the Hasmoneans, first Hasmonean kings, there's a sense that the population the people have to have their say and have to confirm this. So that's also, I think, that's different, right? And kind of in a kind of interesting modern cosmopolitan way as well. In any event, the next generation, they were total Hellenizers and were persecuting religious Jews within a generation or two. So it didn't, that part didn't last. And one more thing I'll say. This aspect of the Civil War is hidden in it's sort of alluded to but not explicit in the Al-Hanisim prayer that we say. It talks about a fight, doesn't really say who we fight against. And when the Talmud emphasizes the miracle of oil, that's also a way of saying, this is the part of the holiday that we're really going to embrace, and the fighting and the Civil War and that part we're not going to embrace. And so that's also like a way of kind of, it's there, and in fact, Rambam writes that if you don't have enough, you can't light Shabbos candles or Hanukkah candles. You only have like one candle or one little bit of oil. You can't light both. He says you light Shabbos candles, because what do Shabbos candles signify? Sabbath candles signify, or they enable peace in the home in a very pragmatic way, because you're not going to trip and hurt yourself in the dark, and in a like romantic way, because husband and wife are gazing at each other using the light of the Shabbos candles, and are able to have a romantic Shabbat experience using the light to enhance that. And so Sabbath candles are about peace, and Rambam writes, and peace is what the Torah was given to. The Torah was given for no other purpose than to create peace in the world. That's what the Torah is all about. And so if you have a conflict between Hanukkah and Shabbos, you light your Shabbos candles. And that's how he ends his entire book of holidays and seasons, with that like very poetic praise of the value of peace. I don't think it's a coincidence that he puts that there in his discussion of Hanukkah, this violent, which has under the surface this violence, civil war element as well.
The Hellenizing involved worshipping other gods? Or
Seems like it did. I mean, it involved many things. It involved, they were opposite to circumcision, which the Greeks saw as barbaric and mutilation, and it involved also worship of Greek gods as well. Book of Maccabees is worth, written by a Jew for a Jewish audience. Didn't make it into our Bible, but it's, worth reading, and yeah. Anything else? There's a lot more to say, but I think we'll pause with there. Anything else? Let's go to one more. Let's look at Rosh Chodesh before we end tonight, okay? Rosh Chodesh, okay, we're back to... And Hanukkah starts soon. Hanukkah starts very soon. Hanukkah starts next... when does it start? It starts on...
Saturday night?
It starts on Sunday night. Sunday night. Okay? So... That's very soon. Okay? Alright. So, just jumping back to number 1, letter C, number 1, Rosh Chodesh. Rosh Chodesh is the first of the Hebrew month. This seems like it used to be a bigger deal, like a bigger holiday. There's a story in Scripture, in the Hebrew Bible, and the Book of Kings, right? There's Elisha goes to this woman, and her son dies, and her husband's like, "What are you doing? Why are you going to the prophet today?" It's not Shabbat and it's not Rosh Chodesh. That's the one. Okay, it seems like Rosh Chodesh was the day that she would go to synagogue, she would go visit the prophet, whatever. It seems like it was a bigger day in biblical time period, maybe a day out from work, a day of religious gathering. So now it's less that, although I think there are ways, in our house we try to give our kids like special treats for breakfast on Rosh Chodesh. People dress a little bit extra nicely on Rosh Chodesh. And some schools try to do extra like fun programming for kids on Rosh Chodesh. So it is, we try to make it a special day in some ways. The main way that we mark Rosh Chodesh is that the liturgy is different in synagogue. Instead of the regular Shachrit, Mincha, and Musaf, 3 prayers a day, we add Shachrit, Mincha, and Mariv. Morning, afternoon, evening, we add Musaf, the additional prayer service, just like on Shabbat, just like on holidays. There's a Musaf service on Rosh Chodesh. So it's a work day for most people. They go to work, they don't take off from work on Rosh Chodesh. So we're praying at 6:45 in the morning, but after Shachrit, instead of being done, we then say a Musaf Amidah, which focuses on the special sacrifices that were offered in the temple on this day. So that's, the Musaf corresponds to those extra sacrifices on Rosh Chodesh. So the first of the Hebrew month, again, it's a day that comes 12 times a year, 11 times a year, and so we mark it mostly liturgically. We also add a paragraph to the other Amidas we say, like the regular 19 blessings, standing, silent devotional prayer of Shachrit, Mincha, and Mariv, morning, afternoon, evening. We add a paragraph for Rosh Chodesh, and in Merkat Hamazon, the grace after meals, we add a paragraph for Rosh Chodesh. So it's marked throughout the day in our liturgy, and then we add Musaf in the morning, and then some people have treats for breakfast, okay? If you're in my house. That's Rosh Chodesh. Question about Rosh Chodesh?
Well, there's also the prayer. Isn't there a prayer also in Rosh Chodesh where you head outside?
We talked about last week. That's the Kiddush Levana, the blessing we say when we actually see the growing moon. That's usually said Saturday night after Rosh Chodesh. The moon has to be a certain size already.
And it has to be after Shabbat.
It doesn't have to be after Shabbat, actually. The custom is to wait till after Shabbat, because we want to be wearing nice clothes.
Yeah.
So, but you can do it really any night, and maybe if it's cloudy, maybe smart not to wait until after Shabbat,
Okay.
lest you lose your chance to say it altogether.
Okay.
Because you can only say it as the moon is growing, so once it's the 15th of the month, it's too late.
Yeah.
Okay. That's called Kiddush HaChodesh.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. Let's pause here, because the other holidays, I think there's more to say about them. So, and we'll do that next time. And let's try to schedule our next classes, because we haven't, I think we sort of used up all the ones that are on the calendar.